Welcome to Trillium's Plain Talk. I'm Steve Laska, managing partner of Trillium Wealth, and I'm here with my partner, head of investments here at Trillium, Matt Gomoll. As most of you know, Matt and I both have a military background. His is much more recent than mine, and he has some real expertise in the Middle East. So we are here today with a special edition of Plain Talk. We just did one last week, and normally we take 2 weeks in between, but with the world events happening this past weekend, we thought it was important to get out to you all now. So Matt, where do we start?
Yeah, this is a personal one for me. Like you said, I spent time in Iraq as a platoon leader back in, that was 08. Getting pretty old now. And then a couple deployments to the Middle East as a special forces officer. And Iran loomed large over the whole thing. When I was in Iraq, they were supplying rockets and EFPs, which were roadside bombs, trying to kill us daily. I tried to hunt them down in the marshes of southern Iraq as they were trying to move weapons from Iran to Iraq and smuggle things. So they've been a thorn in our side for a long, long time. And fortunately, I've grown quite familiar with them and the interwoven network they have across the Middle East. So kind of, I think what would work here today is talk about what just happened and is ongoing, what is going on with this military operation, back up little context of how we even got here. Why did this happen? What events led to this place? Kind of talk through what happens next and what it means for our clients in the markets.
If you can, Matt, touch a little bit on why now. I mean, because here's what I got out of this weekend. The news doesn't know how to cover news anymore. Like, this is real news, and I turned it on every different station, and it was like a little bit of news with a lot of politics in it. And so we'll have all kinds of distractions on why now, why do we do these things? And I think you'll be able to provide some bigger insight to us and some better insights for us on why now. Why now? If it's not political, why now?
Yeah. So there's a couple reasons of the why now. One is having to do with our side, right? So what we were trying to get out of negotiations, and the other side is what's going on with Iran. So first off, the Trump administration set out to negotiate with Iran, and I don't think they started out saying, yeah, this is just a cover for buying us time till we're going to wipe you out. I don't think that. I think they were like, we want, number one, no nuclear development. That's a no. Number two, no ballistic missiles. You use those to threaten other people in the region and to project power. You're done with that. And number three, no more proxy forces. So Iran is very famous for having projecting power throughout the Middle East and being a destabilizing force by sponsoring and supplying weapons to and money to Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza Strip, to the Houthis in Yemen, to the Assad regime, to Iraqi Shia militias, right? So they have all these tentacles throughout the Middle East. And we said, enough of that. It's been destabilizing for the last, the entire time the regime's been in place since, 79 or 80. Those were non-negotiable for them. So they were saying, nope, maybe we'll get to we're not going to stop. We're going to say we're not going to do nuclear development, but we want to have certain level of enrichment that gets us close to, on path to weapons grade if we ever feel like turning it up. That's the same playbook they had with the Obama administration and the Europeans under the JCPOA back in maybe 2015. Ballistic missiles have never been on the table. And after their strikes against Israel, it was clear that they're willing to use them. And, combine those two things of delivery system being the ballistic missile and a nuclear weapon. And now all of a sudden you have a nuclear missile that, if you don't intercept it, is hitting a city. So that was just unacceptable. So the talks broke down from our side saying we can't get to yes on these things with this regime. On the Iranian side, they are weaker than ever, which is just a sea change from where things have been. They really were pretty powerful, projecting force through Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, Shia militias, and the Assad government. And they've all been dismantled. Honestly, like the Iraqi militias and the Houthis are probably the only ones really sort of standing. And that's just because they haven't been targeted enough yet. Hamas kicked off October 7th attack from the Gaza Strip into Israel. That has led to them being wiped out. They are no longer an effective fighting force. In the north, Hezbollah got hit by Israel, famously with the pager attack, where they planted bombs and pagers and killed a lot of their members and leaders. And then, some strikes by Israel. The Assad regime fell to the rebel groups, and they were Al Qaeda related, but that is their new government. So Assad is gone. The Iraqi militias are still around, but not really projecting power as much, and they're kind of skirmishing with ISIS, the remnants of ISIS that is still out there. And the Houthis, they messed around with shipping in the Red Sea, and we hit them a bunch, and they're not really up to much. They're still in charge down in southern Yemen, but they're not a potent fighting force anymore.
I think though, Matt, like real quick on that, like, because I know people get concerned about these things. So when they talk about the Houthis and the Straits controlling 20% of the world's oil, I think they think back to a few months ago when they were a little bit of a nuisance to us. I mean, the amount of naval firepower that we have there right now is significantly different. Like I don't think they're really a threat in there anymore. They were a little bit, we just have a few boats down there, but boy, when you look at the news and you see the amount of naval firepower in that region of the world right now, I don't think we should be afraid of. I'm not saying people couldn't get hurt, but the Houthis stopping trade necessarily.
Yeah, definitely not. No, you're right. You're right about that. And that was also under a different administration that had felt more constrained. And so, yes, when we talk about the risks to shipping, can they be a nuisance? Can the Houthis launch some stuff? Yeah. Can the Iranians still launch stuff against the Straits of Hormuz? Yes, for now. And that's a big difference. They can disrupt shipping. Right now, we've seen the traffic in the Straits of Hormuz slow to a trickle because of the risks, and insurance companies don't want to pay for or be on the hook for a ship that gets sunk. So they just say, oh, well, the insurance cost for navigating this is astronomical. However, to fire a weapon system into the Straits, you have to be somewhere that can range that, hit it. We are absolutely dismantling their weapon systems and targeting, their missile launch, their anti-ship. And absolutely, I think our Navy will be scouring that area to say, where could they project power into the Straits from? And let's just patrol it, because nobody, we have air superiority now. So nobody's shooting our stuff down. And we can just patrol that area, and anybody who pops up trying to attack shipping, we're just going to take them out.
And for right now, I mean, I maybe have a bias on this, but it's for lack of a better term, the best spy agencies in the world between us and Israel and our way to collect information. I don't know if there's any countries better than those two, particularly in that area of, between the CIA and the Israelis at collecting intelligence.
Yeah. That kind of goes into, number one, what happened since October 7th? Why are we in a different place? And number two, this kind of idea of regime change from the air. So first point being, the gloves came off for Israel on October 7th. That was a devastating attack that they didn't see coming, and they were really, really damaged by it. When it happened, I heard calculations based on like how many people are in Israel and how many people were killed and captured, and comparing it to, it was like 10 9/11s as far as the scale of it. So it was a shock to their system, and they went on the offensive, and they took out Hamas in Gaza Strip, took out Hezbollah, have done things into Syria to hit Iranian targets and weapons shipments. And then eventually Iran and Israel started hitting each other. And what became very apparent was Israel could hit wherever they felt like. They have penetrated the Islamic Republic regime to such an unbelievable extent of knowing where nuclear scientists are, commanders in the Revolutionary Guard Corps. Last year when there were attacks, they knew where Khomeini was, Ayatollah Khomeini, and the U.S. said, no, don't go that far. Like, this is, we're just going to hit them, give them a bloody nose, and come back to negotiating. They could have taken them out a year ago. So their ability to pinpoint targets is unprecedented, and arguably better than the CIA. They have people on the ground. They have people working for them, whether they're Israeli or just, people they've hired. So they were very well prepared for this, and we have certainly been coordinating with them throughout. Now, this gets into, you'll hear pundits on the news say, well, regime change can't happen through air power alone. Well, that idea came about from the 90s when we were fighting in Kosovo and Bosnia and trying to affect regime change and trying to remove a bad guy from power with airstrikes. The level of intelligence and precision strikes and stealth fighters, the ability for us to go wherever we want with very little threat to our aircraft and know exactly where the target is we want to hit and make that weapon hit that target is unprecedented. We are not in the same world as we were in the 90s. So when you see, the top 10 people in their military and government system all killed in the opening salvo of strikes, it is de facto regime change. It is just not the same regime that it was a week ago.
Yeah, not to mention, by the way, very different terrain in the areas that you're talking about as well. But I would say this. So as we continue on this conversation, it doesn't take a lot of research. Like, it's already very unpopular, right? The decision's very unpopular because people are seeing on the news, like you just said, like, oh, it's the same as last time, right? It's unpopular worldwide, and even that's flipping around. Starmer, it's unprecedented for the Brits to deny us access like he did.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he already regrets it, right? Like he all of a sudden, he's like, wait a second, I might do that. And Trump's just said to him, too late, buddy, right? But he, by the way, I was surprised. Trump gave him a little bit of an out. He goes, I think he was worried about the legality of it. He made that comment, but very quickly, talk a little bit, because again, how does this affect, world markets and stuff for us? The Iranians attacked people that were going to sit on the sidelines, like the entire Middle East. They hate the Ayatollah. None of the different countries around, they're like him, but they typically, when these things happen, go, okay, we don't like him either, and instead the Iranians launched attacks, I think, on like the UAE, on Bahrain, on Saudis, and quickly all of those countries said, gloves are off. The U.S. can come in here and fly where they want, go where they want, no restrictions, which I think again helps your idea of a fight from the air.
Yeah, it's so. This is a nuanced point. Iranians are not Arab. The Middle East is Arab, right? So these are two different. They're located there, but they're Persian culturally. They are Shia religiously, whereas most of the rest of the Middle East is Sunni. So there has, it's easy to just look at the Middle East as a problem set and say, they're all this and they're all on the same team against the West. Not at all. They have their own interests. So Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Gulf states are afraid of Iran, have long been afraid of Iran because it is it's a big country has spent a lot on its military and proxy forces, and they're afraid of it. So we are there, have long been there as a source of protection for those countries. And they don't want to get into it with Iran. They're a bit, they just know, these missiles, these drones can start flying. They can hit we've saw it already. Them just flying drones into apartment buildings, hotels, not to mention nuclear, or not nuclear, but oil refineries, right? So not good. They had a kind of detente with Iran, which is like, we're not going to mess with you. You don't mess with us. Let's just kind of everybody hang out and don't fight in that direction. Yes, sometimes we both don't like Israel. Sometimes it's, we're antagonists to other people, but we're not going to mess with each other. And as soon as Iran started getting hit by Israel and the US, they were just launching against Gulf states because they're close, because it's easy. Now, I would say because the Iranian leadership was so decimated in the opening strikes, it's hard to know who's controlling these things, right? It's not like in the U.S. where we have a broad control over our forces and we're directing strikes and approving things at a high level. At some point, I think communication was breaking down, and people who had weapon systems, whether ballistic missiles or drones, were just like, I'm going to take it upon myself to like shoot in that direction. Or the last thing I know, my boss told me to like shoot at them. So whether it's a coordinated, effort, we saw that launches were not coordinated. So ideally, what the Iranians would want to do is saturate the air. If you launch 200 ballistic missiles / drones, rockets, whatever, if you launch all that stuff into the air at once, it's much harder for air defense and our jets to shoot it down, as opposed to piecemeal, right? 10 things get launched, and then, a little bit later, another 20. We were, both the US, Israel, but also our partners in the Middle East were very effective at shooting down everything, right? Like there were, they shot down the vast majority of it, and did a quarter of weapon systems get through? Yeah, they did. And that's resulted in casualties, unfortunately. But as far as a protection effort, it was very effective. And so, yeah, it has turned, them by attacking the rest of the Gulf states, they are not friends, and those Gulf states are going to long remember what they did. And that's to our benefit, both in the prosecution of this war, to the alignment of those countries towards the US and friendly towards us. So yeah, it was a big mistake they made.
I think, Matt, like, again, when everybody wants to do, because I do want to talk here in a second about, why there's this kind of, there should always be a dislike for war. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. It's a waste of human lives, but it's something that has happened since the dawn of humankind. And I think what people may miss when and I haven't been to these regions, right? But I see what I see on TV. If you were in the 90s and you were to do damage to like physical stuff in the Middle East, it would be like, yeah, it stinks, right? But that's a major hub now. I mean, that's a major financial and business hub in a lot of those countries. And although I think everybody wants things to take place faster, it seems like from a distance, and you haven't been there a while either, but it seems like in a distance, like, although it's not happening fast enough, a lot of the other Middle Eastern countries are making cultural advances with things like women and education and all those things. And Iran is being held back by the Ayatollahs, right? So I think there's this kind of, there's a little bit, the timing when everybody says, why now? I mean, I could give you a good answer, because we can't let it continue. You can't let the threat continue. So if not today, tomorrow, the next day, it's become untenable. Real quick, if you can, for a second before, and I do want to talk a little bit about how it's going to affect people short term and long term, but um, like they get a lot of blame right now, right? There's a lot of blame on, well, Trump pulled out of the nuclear deal with Iran, and that's why we're here today. I'm not on the side of that. I think they're bad actors, and I think the deal was like just paper. I don't think there was anything real there. I mean, at the end of the day, it does take longer, just like he did not obliterate their nuclear program. It can't be that fast, right? So this whole thing where we had that deal in place, and then you find out like, okay, it didn't happen when the deal went down. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, The JCPOA was not a good deal. And what we've seen, like you said, this has been brewing for a long, long, long time. The the change in calculus was how weak Iran proved to be, right? So prior to Israel striking them pretty much with impunity, it was feasible to say, "Ugh, let's not mess with Iran. They could really put up a fight and hurt us." After that event, it was kind of like they're a bit of a paper tiger. They do still have a lot of ballistic missiles. They have drones. They can project power and make things, damage things, but they can't even protect themselves. They cannot control their airspace. So I, I would say if presidents before now knew how weak Iran was at defending themselves, they may have done it too. But it just became very, very clear that it wasn't, it was suffering embarrassing protests at home, which it has long just brutally put down and repressed. In this last round that happened in January, there's reports, it could have been 7,000 people killed in the streets. It could have been 30. We don't know. But there is clearly desire for people to no longer live under that repression. They can look across the Straits of Hormuz at those folks living in Dubai and building a financial center of the Middle East. And so they're like, we have 90 million people in Iran and we have all this oil, natural gas, minerals. Why are we doing this? Tehran almost ran out of water. It's insane. The corruption that the Islamic regime has there is terrible. And so, yeah, it was a confluence of all these things. So no, the old deal was just kicking the can down the road and enabling them to just keep being the same bad actors that they've always been, when we should have put a stop to this long ago. We should have had, in my opinion, they were funneling weapons, explosively formed projectiles, EFPs, that were blowing up our vehicles. We should have done something to hit them back then, and we didn't, because the calculus was different back in the early 2000s.
Going back longer than that, I think I talked to you about it. When I
Yeah.
was your oldest son's age, Gavin, he's in that 11, 12-year-old range, the Ayatollah Khomeini was as big of a mortal enemy to our country as Russia was. And for people that forget, in the late 70s and 80s, before Reagan came in, that was a very, very big threat. So it just kind of, like you said to me today, like, yeah, but we forgot, right? So nothing's really progressed from then. So Matt, we know. So first of all, I haven't checked the market here at the end of the day, but earlier in the day, it was kind of like, it kind of shrugs off a lot of stuff now, by the way. It's just saying like, let's see, right? And I do think there's something to be said for that. I don't think there's any real move right now, because I do think the administration, I don't think they're going to commit to a ground war. I think they're going along the lines that you are, like, actually air superiority. We can go in there and we can just kind of knock stuff out. And there's already protests going on, and there's a way for people to rise up. So I don't think they'll commit to that. I could be wrong. But what I liked about what you talked to our team today is, how about the positive out of this? Like, you just started to allude to it a little bit. Like, if this works, and again, it's a big risk because it's always an unpopular decision, right? But if this were to work and the Iranian people were able to, all the stuff you just named, get all that back, what's the effect, do you think, on kind of the world economy, and how that really affects our clients on the value of things, and how they can, how they can source different things? Energy, they have plenty of energy in Iran, which, as we've talked about in the past, the more we have AI, we need more energy. We need all kinds of energy, whatever the sources are. What are the upsides that could happen out of this that could be something really, really good?
Yeah. So I'll first say, we have to understand that volatility is part of this, right? War is chaos, and we have started something and we don't necessarily know how it is going to end. So can there be volatility along the way with energy prices? Oil was up 6% today. the general stock markets, U.S. markets, opened down and finished about flat, right? So that was kind of a sign that there was some negativity at the start of the day, and S&P finished flat. So how much negativity is there? Something else could happen. Got it. And so over the next 1 to 3 months, do we know how this is going to play out? No, we don't. But that's normal for any market. What's going to happen next month? I don't know. We kind of see some direction, but we don't know, especially when there's a major war going on that the U.S. is involved in. However, as long-term investors, I think it's responsible behavior to look past that and say, where does this go? And so a couple things. Number one, right now, Iran is just like, we have a lot of sanctions on them, sanctions that are going back years and years and years, plus new ones. So a ton of sanctions that has really stifled their economy, led to a ton of inflation, which causes people not to be happy. And that was part of one of the reasons that all these people were protesting in January is, like it was like a baker couldn't sell their bread because their input costs were going through the roof. And so they're like, I don't even know what I'm going to sell bread for tomorrow because the inflation is out of control. So because Iran has long been, what we would call a rogue state, they have found alignment with Russia and with China. And so they're selling a lot of their Shahed drones to Russia. Russia's kind of copied that and made their own, but they were helping with Russia's war effort. I expect that's going to stop, right? So yeah, Russia, no more of these coming in. You're going to have to make them at home. That's a good thing. Like less killing in Ukraine, that'd be great. China has been buying 90% of Iran's oil, and they buy it at a discount because Iran has not very many choices of where they can sell that stuff. So number one, if China still wants to buy 90% of Iran's oil, guess what? It's not at a discount anymore, because if we have a change in regime, the sanctions can get removed, right? We don't need to sanction a regime that says, I'm going to give up nukes, I'm going to give up ballistic missiles and my proxy forces. We can remove those. And now they can just compete on the open market. That will create an added cost of billions of dollars for China importing oil. Minerals, there are tons of minerals in Iran that now you could invest, a company can go and invest there in a mine and in processing facilities to export that. So the just quantity of minerals hitting the market should be higher. We're also in a period of rising demand for a lot of minerals. And so if we just have more quantity, more demand, maybe we can keep prices stable. And that'll benefit the Iranian economy. They've long been a very educated people. And going back to 1979, pre-Islamic Revolution, they were very educated and Western leaning. And so you can imagine a new generation saying, yeah, that last 40 some years was not good. We don't like it. We don't want to go back there. So whoever takes charge next, we want to be opened up. We want to be less repressive. We want an economy that can use all of these, all of the talents of the population and the resources of the country to enrich ourselves. And that's positive. I mean, that's just good for the world, I think.
Yeah, and something that you've talked to me a lot about, not just recently, but over the years of our friendship, is you mentioned many times that Iran has a rich culture, and a lot of Middle Eastern countries don't. Like, they actually have a really rich culture and history, and there's something about that I think allows, if people can be in the right situation with the right leadership, for people to really progress at a much more accelerated rate than trying to figure out culture, so to speak.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Here we are. Here's how we operate. Who we want to be.
Yeah, they were not a bunch of Middle Eastern countries were manufactured by the British and the French going back to the early 1900s, post World War I. This is not that. This is not, we're going to jam a bunch of people together, draw some lines, and just make them live together. This is, the Persian Empire existed. I mean, we know stories of the Persian Empire competing with the Greeks all the way back in the day. So they have an identity, which is good. They can come together and flourish as a people. the Persian American community is fantastic. I mean, they are very successful people at large, and their brothers and sisters back in Iran have just been repressed. And so the idea that you could open up a society to flourishing is just, it's wonderful. Now, I will say a lot of people on the news will talk about like, oh, regime change this or that, and it's not possible. I would tell you it already is happening. Just the fact that the next 10 people in line are no longer there, by definition, whoever steps up, whoever gains power is different. We've also seen here, this is what I would call like breaking the seal. So for a long time, U.S. politics has resisted intervening in Iran. Well, we just broke the seal, right? A little bit when we hit the nuclear site. That was very, very strategic and targeted. And now if this turn, this is already way bigger than that. If it turns into a 4-week operation, like Trump is saying, it will just be the complete leveling of the regime infrastructure. Somebody has to step into that. Now, civil war is possible, right? That's super dangerous. That is what happened in Syria when multiple factions were fighting as the Assad regime lost control of the countryside. ISIS popped up, rebel groups popped up, and Assad was fighting them all, right? So it's possible. However, what I think is not necessarily possible is going back to their old ways of nuclear, desires, ballistic missiles, and proxy forces raining chaos across the Middle East. I don't think it's possible because we've just said, yeah, if you go that route, we're just going to hit you. And I don't care if it's this administration or a Democratic administration next. If what was proven out by this is, hey, we can do this at relatively low cost to the U.S. and relatively low risk. And if those folks start acting up and if they go down the wrong direction with their next government, we can hit them again. That's a big difference from what things had been.
So to close it out, like, what are you looking on behalf of our clients, and when you're leading the investment team, like, what will you be looking at over the next few weeks that will make you have pause for concern to go, hold on a second, wait, that somebody zigged when they should have zagged there? And what will you be looking at as, hey, this is a good sign, like we're on track to accomplish the things we're, and it's not going to be over in 4 weeks, but what will you be looking at during that time period that will make you say, hey, Steve, we got to look at some things investment wise, or hey, Steve, this is what I thought it would be, and we're in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think a big one is the impact to the energy market. So right now, like I said, oil spiked 6% today. If that's all that happens from this war, oh well, that's not a big deal, and it will come back down. Right now, it's based on the slowdown of shipping through that Straits of Hormuz. If there's a lot of damage to the the energy infrastructure in the Middle East, that's a problem, right? That is, oil storage sites, oil refinery sites, ports, the places that the oil actually gets on a ship. If that stuff is targeted and damaged or destroyed, that's a bigger problem that lasts, a year or more until it gets fixed, right? And we were talking about this earlier. There is flexibility across the global oil market for another producer to ramp up production while Middle Eastern production is constrained due to damage to their infrastructure. We haven't had to do that, but I think that would take up a lot of the slack and the concern I have with the disruption to the oil market. And that's kind of if there's enough damage to infrastructure, could it be a problem for the next year? Yeah, it could. Longer term, I think this is bullish for international stocks and emerging market stocks. I think the idea of removing them as a risk. Iran has taken up so much time and energy and attention and resources and money from the United States, where we have just constantly have forces there to deter or combat them. This also, not only did we talk about China feeling a pinch economically if they have to buy oil at full price, also, if we finally make a pivot to China and we stop worrying about the Middle East, because guess what? It's, a lot of that stuff has died down. That takes less or takes risk off of the Taiwan invasion thing. If we can pay attention to them and say, hey, don't do it. We're not distracted by the Middle East anymore. We're watching you. Because that's the other great source of geopolitical risk is Taiwan and China, and what happens to the chip markets globally if something pops off there. So our ability to pay attention to that and not be distracted over here a year from now is probably good for just reducing geopolitical risk and making just the world a little bit more stable, as everybody says, all right, that problem solved. This other problem we're paying close attention to, and we don't think it's going to pop off because that's got our full attention.
Yeah, I will say, Matt, that as I said to our team this morning, it's not overnight either, but turning up existing production is much easier than drilling new wells. Yeah. And there's been some things, whether people like the answer that they see on TV, there are some things that we should all be learning about national security here right now. Like one, we are an energy rich nation and we need to be producing it ourselves for exactly at times like this, right? Two, we did not get involved in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. This would be impossible to do. Like, that's the whole thing. You can't fight too many wars on too many fronts. And like you said, we have to look at what's happening in Asia as well. But there's been some good lessons on national security and how it, when you fight, where you fight, when you get involved, where you deploy stuff, and energy production. And, you talked about the same things. I was, watching our stuff on just production on the tariffs from last week on steel and the things that you have to do. So I'll remain cautiously optimistic. Again, I think that people don't realize, very few people, it's not like the movies. If you serve this country in uniform, like I did, like Cherry did, like Sandy did, like you did, nobody wishes for war, right? It's not something you wish for. It's something that is a reality, and something that having a strong defense is important to our country, because any fragility can be long reaching, right? And so I'm going to stand by. I think it was, like you said, when everybody's going to turn on politics and say, well, it's to distract from this or this or this. I think the timing was right because the timing was right. At the end of the day, like you said, you have a weakened adversary who did not listen 3 months ago, right? Bottom line, that's what happened. And we know that, and I don't mean this to be political, it's just different administration. Like during the Obama administration, it was like we're going to draw the line in the sand with the Syrians and don't cross this. And okay, we crossed it. All right, then don't cross this one. Okay, then don't cross this one. And it literally was like a little kid, just we'll draw a new line and don't cross it. And they kept crossing it. For better or for worse, this is a pretty good message of don't cross it. Don't cross it. You got to draw a line sooner or later. So, all right, Matt, I won't speculate on what we're going to talk about next, because this was kind of, like I said, a special edition. And there may be I think there'll be some cleanup on these things even next week. We'll keep people informed. I like your thoughts on what you're thinking about on behalf of our clients, and we're lucky to have you. So with that, as usual, click and subscribe. Ask us any questions you want. Send them via email. Call any of your team here at Trillium, and we look forward to serving you going forward.